Step away from the vehicle.
Officer, I am active duty military. What is the basis for this stop?
I'm not going to ask you again. Get out of the car.
I have my common access card, military ID, right here. Let me show you.
That uniform doesn't look right to me. Could be anything.
Sir, that is a Navy Cross. I earned it in combat.
Sure you did.
A man in a dark navy jacket stood at pump number 4 under the fluorescent wash of a BP canopy, inserting his card, waiting for the tank to fill. His shoulder boards caught the light 2.5 gold stripes. The Navy Cross rested above a column of ribbons. He had been back on American soil for 11 hours. The deputy sheriff's cruiser swung into the lot at 10:55, lights already flashing. The deputy covered the distance between his door and the pump in long, deliberate strides, one hand near his weapon. He had decided something before he climbed out of the car. The man in the dress blues did not run. He did not raise his voice. He stood at parade rest, produced his credentials, and waited to be believed. He was not believed. If you are ready to see institutional racism taken down, like this video and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now because you won't want to miss tomorrow's story of cops messing with the wrong people and finding out. Let's continue. Deputy Sheriff Brett Donovan had been with the Jeffrey Bruno County Sheriff's Department for 9 years when he responded to a call that would unravel his career and expose a record the department had quietly protected for nearly a decade. He was 35 years old, seasoned enough to know procedure by reflex, confident enough to trust his instincts over evidence standing directly in front of him. He was not an officer who made impulsive errors. He was an officer whose errors followed a design. The man at pump number 4 was Lieutenant Commander Andre Lawson, a 37-year-old Navy SEAL, a combat veteran of multiple overseas deployments, recipient of the Navy Cross for Valor under fire, and a son of the very Jeffrey Bruno County streets Donovan patrolled. Lawson had survived Bud's training at Coronado when 82% of his class quit. He had earned his gold trident through cold Pacific water, sleep deprivation, and a refusal to ring the bell. He was 11 months home from his last deployment, stopping for gas on the way to surprise his mother with flowers. What Donovan did next, dismissing Lawson's common access card after 3 seconds, demanding the uniform be removed in the parking lot, and placing a decorated combat veteran in handcuffs while customers filmed from 6 feet away would trigger a military review, a federal civil rights investigation, and a trial that put 9 years of documented conduct on public record. The Navy Cross was still pinned to Lawson's chest when the cuffs snapped shut. Donovan's record had a story of its own. 14 formal complaints across 9 years. 14, and every single complainant was a person of color. A black family picnicking in Riverside Park, surrounded by deputies over a noise complaint that never existed. A Hispanic teenager detained 40 minutes outside Westridge Mall, backpack searched without consent, never charged with anything. An Asian American nurse questioned outside the county courthouse about her reasons for being in the neighborhood. A black college athlete pulled over on the highway for driving, in Donovan's documented words, too carefully, car searched, nothing found, 2 hours lost. 3 written reprimands. 4 mandatory retraining sessions. And yet the Jeffrey Bruno County Sheriff's Department had reviewed each complaint individually, marked each one insufficient evidence, and returned Donovan to full duty until the night he put a Navy SEAL in handcuffs in front of 6 cell phone cameras and a gas station's 8-channel recording system. 10:48 p.m. The BP station on Franklin Avenue burned white bright against the surrounding dark. Every pump an island of fluorescent light on a street that knew nothing gentle. The silver Toyota Camry at pump number 4 sat motionless, tank filling in the Tuesday night quiet. And Lieutenant Commander Andre Lawson stood beside it with the same stillness he had learned to carry in places far louder than this. His service dress blues were immaculate. The dark navy jacket carried its gold buttons in 2 vertical columns, each one centered exactly. The white shirt beneath it was pressed flat. The black tie was knotted without deviation. Rows of ribbons scaled the left breast in precise military order. And above them all, first row, first position, the Navy Cross hung where it had been pinned 6 months earlier. In a ceremony his mother had watched through her phone screen from a folding chair in her living room. The gold seal trident sat just above the ribbons, embossed and substantial. The shoulder boards showed 2.5 stripes. The uniform was not a costume. It was a document. Lawson was not thinking about the uniform. He was thinking about the flowers, yellow ones, his mother's preference, the kind she had kept in a mason jar on the kitchen windowsill when he was growing up 2 miles from this exact gas station. He had been back in country for 11 hours. The plan was to knock, hold the flowers up, and watch her face rearrange itself from suspicion to disbelief to the particular relief of a parent who had rehearsed grief too many times. He had grown up on these streets, not near them, not adjacent to them, but on them. He knew the corner 3 blocks east where Darius Gaines had been shot at 17. He knew the wall where Marcus Webb's memorial had weathered from color to gray. He knew the 4th friend who came back from Kandahar in a flag-draped box. He had carried all 3 names through BUD-S like ballast. On the nights when 82% of his class was gone and the Pacific was 48 degrees and the instructors were asking whether anyone else wanted to ring the bell and go home warm, he had not rung the bell. He kept moving. Not because the pain stopped, because he had decided that the names he carried were not a burden, they were a reason. The tank clicked full at 10:53. Deputy Sheriff Brett Donovan pulled into the station 2 minutes later at an angle that was not procedural, the front end swinging wide before the tires caught, lights already going. He put the car in park and was moving before the engine settled, crossing the concrete apron in long strides with his right hand drifting toward his hip. He had not been dispatched. He had seen the Camry from Franklin Avenue and turned in. Lawson heard the cruiser before he turned. He turned slowly, not submissively, but with the deliberate economy of a man who had learned that sudden movements in ambiguous situations carry costs. He watched Donovan close the distance. He held his hands visible at his sides. The logic of the moment was familiar, even if the county was not. Donovan stopped 4 feet away and looked at the uniform the way a man looks at something he has already decided is wrong, catalogued it, dismissed it. Not because it was inconsistent with itself, but because the person wearing it was inconsistent with his expectation of who wore such things. He asked for identification in the flat tone of a man who does not expect the answer to matter. Lawson produced his common access card, a DoD-issued credential, embedded with a microchip and a holographic seal, the most authenticated identification the federal government produces for active duty personnel. Donovan looked at it for 3 seconds. He set it on the roof of the Camry without examining the chip, without reading the rank designation, without acknowledging the seal. He set it down the way a man sets down something he has already decided is irrelevant. What followed took 11 minutes. Donovan told Lawson the uniform needed to come off here, in the parking lot, under the lights, in front of the 7 customers and 2 attendants who had begun to slow and stop and reach for their phones. Lawson refused, not loudly. He stood in the posture of a man trained to hold a position until ordered otherwise by someone with the authority to give that order, and made clear, in clipped and measured language, that he would not be removing his service dress blues in a gas station parking lot in the county where he was born. Deputy Lena Harper and Deputy Tyler Quinn arrived at 10:59. Both read the scene in the first 3 seconds, the posture of the man in dress blues, the CAC still on the roof of the Camry, the phones already out. Harper moved toward the pump with the instinct of someone who understood that what was happening needed to stop, and Donovan caught her by the arm. He said something. The station's 8-channel camera system recorded it, 3 cell phones recorded it. It was 11 words, the kind of sentence that does not survive a trial, that defense attorneys spend 300 billable hours trying to contextualize and prosecutors read aloud to juries without further comment. Harper went still. Quinn looked at the ground. The handcuffs went on at 10:59 and 40 seconds. Applied through the dress jacket rather than asking Lawson to remove it, a detail later noted in the federal complaint as evidence of deliberate humiliation rather than procedural necessity. The jacket compressed at the wrists. The ribbons shifted. The Navy Cross tilted 3 degrees off its axis. Andre Lawson was walked across the concrete in full dress blues, hands behind his back, past bystanders who were no longer just watching. One woman near the pumps was crying without seeming to know why. The fluorescent lights made everything equally visible, the uniform, the cuffs, the trident. Lawson looked straight ahead. His bearing did not break. Composure is not the absence of feeling. It is the refusal to let circumstances determine your dignity. The ride to the station took 11 minutes. Lawson looked out the window at the streets he had grown up escaping, past the corner where Darius fell, past the wall where Marcus is still remembered in fading paint. The cruiser backed into the Sally Port at 11:10. Sergeant Victor Kane looked up from the intake desk, saw the man in the back seat still wearing the Navy Cross, and set his report down. He looked at Donovan, then back at the dress blues, and somewhere in the calculation moving behind his eyes was the beginning of the problem that would take the next 2 years to resolve. Sergeant Victor Kane did not sit back down. He stood at the intake desk and looked at Andre Lawson with the deliberate attention of a man performing a recalculation he had not anticipated needing. The uniform was wrinkled at the wrists where the handcuffs had compressed the jacket, but it was otherwise exactly what it appeared to be, a complete, coherent, authenticated set of service dress blues belonging to an active duty United States naval officer. The ribbons were in regulation order. The seal trident carried the particular weight of a badge earned at Coronado in conditions engineered to make men quit, not purchased, not borrowed. Kane had seen enough military in 22 years to recognize the difference between a man wearing service and a man who had absorbed it at the cellular level. He reached into Lawson's breast pocket and withdrew the common access card that Donovan had placed there during booking without examining. Under the fluorescence, Kane turned it in his fingers. The microchip. The holographic overlay shifting color as the angle changed, not the flat iridescence of a novelty laminate but the layered security film the DoD had used for decades. The photo matched. The rank matched. The card read, Lawson, Andre T. 05, USN active. Kane picked up the desk phone and dialed Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. 90 seconds. The booking area held its breath. Donovan stood near the far wall. His stillness changed, no longer the stillness of a man managing a situation but of a man waiting to learn what the situation actually was. Harper and Quinn had drifted toward the door. Lawson watched Kane with an expression that communicated nothing except patience, the load-bearing patience of a man who had already waited 14 minutes under direct fire and knew the truth was not going anywhere. The Coronado duty officer confirmed it in 31 words. Lieutenant Commander Andre Lawson, active duty. SEAL Team 5. No disciplinary record. Top secret clearance, current. Scheduled to report for debrief at 0600. As those words settled over the booking room, the question underneath every story like this one becomes impossible to look away from. Should any officer be required to verify military credentials the moment they are presented before an arrest, before cuffs? Before a decorated veteran is walked across a parking lot in front of 8 recording devices? Drop your honest answer in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye 415. And if you believe a single 90-second phone call should be standard procedure, share this video now because accountability only moves when people refuse to let stories like this disappear. 6 minutes followed at a pace that made the previous hour feel leisurely. Captain Vincent Reyes of SEAL Team 5 was reached at his home at 11:47 dressed and in his car before the call ended. NCIS was notified at 11:52. Naval Special Warfare Command alerted the Pentagon duty officer at 11:58. 2 Navy JAG lawyers were driving north by 12:10, case notes on legal pads balanced on steering wheels in the dark. The institutional machinery of the United States military, once engaged on behalf of one of its own, does not move incrementally. It moves all at once. Sheriff Gregory Harlan arrived at 12:40 in sweatpants and a department jacket, walked directly to the booking area, and personally removed the transport restraints. He offered immediate release. All charges dropped. A written apology to follow. His tone was the tone of an administrator managing exposure rather than a man confronting a wrong. Lawson spoke quietly to the sheriff. He had been stopped before, not here, but 8 years earlier on a service road off the same county highway, the same deputy, the same foundational assumption. Stolen valor, Donovan had said in the parking lot with witnesses present. He had held Lawson for 15 minutes, found nothing, and released him without acknowledgement. Lawson had filed a complaint. The department had marked it insufficient evidence, and filed it as number 7 within 3 weeks. 8 years earlier, Lawson had been a young enlisted man with no institutional weight behind him, and the department had made a quiet calculation about the cost of taking him seriously. He absorbed the outcome and went back to his work. 6 combat deployments, a Purple Heart from Ramadi in 2010, a Bronze Star with Valor device, and the 14-minute Mosul action that earned him the Navy Cross. The complaint file had not moved. Federal investigators pulled it from the archive before 1 in the morning, and the 9-year pattern the department had processed as isolated incidents was now subject to a framework in which the Pentagon held a direct institutional interest because one of those incidents had happened twice to the same man. Lawson walked out at 1:12 in the morning. The machinery of justice had only just engaged. By 7 the following morning, the U.S. Attorney's Office had reviewed the gas station footage on 4 monitors simultaneously. Channel 1, Lawson at pump 4, hands visible, posture neutral, a man filling a tank on a Tuesday night. Channel 2, the approach, the angle, the right hand drifting toward the hip, the geometry of a conclusion formed before crossing the lot. Channel 3, the CAC on the roof of the Camry, unread, its holographic seal catching the light while the deputy turned away. Channel 4, audio. The 11 words Donovan spoke to Harper were clear without enhancement. The prosecutor wrote 2 words on her legal pad, underlined them, and did not play the segment again. The 3 cell phone videos had accumulated 2 million views before 6 in the morning and were embedded in national coverage by 9. The footage was unambiguous in the way that only simultaneous angles produce no missing context, no blind spot a defense attorney could inhabit. Every angle confirmed every other angle. The man in dress blues had not moved aggressively, had not raised his voice, had produced credentials dismissed in 3 seconds, and had then stood with the composure of the formally trained while the situation collapsed entirely around him. NCIS agents arrived at the department at 8:45 and began with Harper and Quinn. Both gave accounts that aligned with the footage and diverged in every material particular from Donovan's incident report. Harper's account was precise, the precision of a witness who had spent the night organizing what she had seen into a sequence she intended to deliver accurately when someone with federal authority finally asked. Quinn's statement was briefer but arrived at the same destination. Neither had been asked to coordinate. They did not need to. The 14 complaint file was subpoenaed in full. Inside it, investigators found what external auditors almost never find: documentation of a bureaucracy's own negligence. 2 supervisory memos, drafted in years 4 and 6 of Donovan's tenure, had identified his complaint ratio as statistically anomalous and recommended enhanced oversight. Neither had been implemented. Both were stamped with their receipt dates and buried. In the margin of one, in handwriting later matched to a former deputy chief now retired to Nevada, a single word: handled. The federal trial ran for 9 days. The defense argued good faith error, contextual judgment, the difficulty of split-second policing. The prosecution presented the CAC, the audio, the 2 memos, complaint number 7 from 8 years prior, and the complete service record of Lieutenant Commander Andre Thomas Lawson, GED enlistment at 22, Bud, S completion in the top 5th of survivors, 6 combat deployments, the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star with Valor device, and the Navy Cross citation, which described a man who remained in an exposed forward position under direct enemy fire for 14 uninterrupted minutes to ensure 3 wounded teammates reached extraction and did not leave until ordered to withdraw. The citation was read to the jury in full. The courtroom was quiet for a long time after. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and 40 minutes. At sentencing, the judge addressed Donovan in measured language, the load-bearing tone of a jurist who understood that weight in a federal courtroom does not require amplification. He observed that the defendant had not merely detained one man on one night. He had, across a record now fully examined, repeatedly directed state authority against citizens sharing a single characteristic, within a jurisdiction that had known about the pattern for nearly a decade and chosen, with documented deliberateness, to file it and return him to duty each time. And on the night in question he had extended that pattern to a man who had spent 12 years defending the same authority now turned against him. The United States military had been placed in handcuffs on Franklin Avenue, the judge said. The United States military had answered. The sessionale was in 274. Brett Donovan received 10 years in federal prison for civil rights deprivation under color of law, with an enhancement for the documented pattern across his tenure. The Jeffrey Bruno County Sheriff's Department entered a federal consent decree mandating independent oversight, mandatory credential verification protocols, and a full audit of every complaint file from the preceding 15 years. 3 supervisory officials retired before the audit concluded. The former deputy chief in Nevada was referred for separate proceedings. On the morning the verdict was read, Andre Lawson put on his dress blues. The same jacket dry cleaned and pressed but carrying, faintly at the wrists, the memory of what had happened to it 4 months before. He wore it because it was the correct uniform for the occasion, and because he had never, across 12 years and 6 deployments and everything the work had cost him, allowed conditions imposed from outside to determine how he carried himself. The Navy Cross was back in position, first row, first ribbon. The trident above it solid, earned, unambiguous. He walked out of the federal courthouse into morning light, got into the silver Toyota Camry, and drove back toward Jeffrey Bruno County without stopping for cameras or reporters. Past the intersection where he had stood at 22 with a duffel bag and a decision, past the wall where Marcus is still remembered in fading paint. Down Franklin Avenue past the BP station, white canopy, fluorescent pumps, a place where nothing remarkable is supposed to happen. He did not slow. He drove toward his mother's house, where yellow flowers had been in a mason jar on the kitchen windowsill since the morning after the arrest, replaced weekly, waiting. There is a particular kind of person that institutions learn to underestimate because that person does not perform their strength for an audience. They carry it inward and forward through cold water and dark roads and parking lots under fluorescent lights, through complaints filed and buried and filed again, and they wait with the patient certainty of someone who has learned that truth does not require an invitation. It requires only endurance, and the refusal to disappear. The departments that never learn this lesson discover it the same way Jeffrey Bruno County did, not gradually, not gently, and never alone. The machinery that comes is not built from anger. It is built from documentation, and time, and the quiet persistence of one man who filed his complaint, absorbed the outcome, went back to work, and never stopped being exactly who he was even when the parking lot was lit up and the handcuffs were going on through the dress jacket, through the Navy Cross, through 12 years of proof that nobody had bothered to read.
If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Share this video with someone who would appreciate it, and let's keep building this community together. And before you go, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what stood out to you the most. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next.